Okay guys, I'm putting this arm on inside this hole here. Screwdriver. I've got a piece of 3000 shim stock. There's my washer. You can see it right there, maybe. That little piece of shim stock hanging out there. That's to keep the arm from wiggling back and forth as much. And it could even stand to be a hair bigger. So put a little grease on this nut that goes here between the two pads. That actuates the pads. That shim stock is a good tight fit too. It just barely goes back in there all the way. There we go. And then put the snap ring back in place. Not quite in place. There we go. Okay, so that's taken out most of this play, or a lot of it. This thing was laying all the way back up again. It was actually dragging the housing. And I could actually probably even stand to put a thicker shim in there. For this one could probably stand a thicker one. I think I'm gonna go ahead and put a thicker one in it. Okay guys, starting to repair. This brake adjuster here is completely froze up. Can't get it free. The teeth are about wore off of it. And we twisted the end completely off there nearly as we were trying to get it to spin. So I was searching around on the internet. I found a part from AutoZone that is almost identical, except it's a little bit smaller in diameter. It's not quite as big. I'll hold the two together. They're close. And this little notch is just slightly narrower. So I was debating whether I could open up the notch with a grinder or a mill. Or as thick as these brakes are, all this does is hold the pad apart there so that the tension's basically right on them. And I mean, I'm literally about a 1/16 off of this thing going on. There was another one there that was a little bit bigger. Actually, it was a good bit bigger than this. This is, you can go to Advanced Auto Parts. This is part 1552. It comes as the two pieces. And then there's another one, 1551. It looks similar, it's just a lot bigger. It's even bigger than this one. So I might end up going back tomorrow and getting that one and trying it, but I might just take the grinder and thin this. I only need to take off about a 1/16 of an inch on this right here, and then this one ought to go in here and work just fine to hold these two shoes apart and not let them move around. Let's see, this one here. That one fit in there pretty loose. So we'll see what I do here in a minute. Okay guys, I did a little touch-up grind on this and this right here. And this part fits good and nice. Even the adjuster is about in the right place. And as you you can get that thing to adjust the other way. So if I don't have a bar with me or anything to pry on, but wrench in the way. But it will click up and adjust. This is not actually made for these self-adjusting brakes, but I think it'll work. So again, that's autos or advanced auto part number 1552 for this thing. And I would say keep them, grease it up good so that it doesn't lock up like this one did. This one is, the threaded part still spins. It's this part up top that's supposed to be a pivot as well. It is froze solid, and you can see it twisted it off. So not exactly right, but close, and it's like a $6 part. So this is for an Alco brake adjuster. So it's not perfect, so if you want to go that route, you're more than welcome to. Okay, this is basically a lesson in how to do this without an acetylene torch. I'm just going to try to split the nut. And there we go. And it's split. Now before I can knock the bolt out, I'm going to have to put something underneath this axle. I've got a 5-gallon drum underneath the other side. I'll probably do the same to this one. These axles aren't that heavy. That thing's not going to move real easy anyway. Let's see. Knock this piece up. You got my sucker like welded on there. Oops. As you can see, it is nearly cut all the way through. Nearly doesn't cut it though. Got to be all the way, I guess. Even then, still tough. I cut almost all the way through that thing. There we go. Just a couple pieces left, but it was so rusted to the back there It still wouldn't hardly come free. That is aggravation. Fight me every step of the way. Alright. So we'll say this, it's these times when an acetylene torch would come in super handy. And we've got a torch set up. It's just, we've got a bunch of random tanks. None of them seem to have any acetylene in them. I'm not sure if I can even get some of them filled anymore. We don't do a ton of this work. But when you're doing it, it would definitely be handy to have. Go ahead and knock these parts out of here and bring them up top for a review. Okay guys, I'm going to put you under here. I'm going to go ahead and cut these spring U-bolts because they're just too hard to... The nuts on them are so froze up. Everything on this, I'll pull you out of here shortly and show you what the equalizer bars look like. Everything has been a fight, all frozen up, rusted up. Impact gun's not doing anything for it, so I'm just going to cut them. Getting close. Boom. Beautiful sound, beautiful sound. Even that, it's about rusted in the hole. Oops. Not a lot of room under the middle of this trailer. That looks like still on. Oak. There she goes. Alright, in case you're wondering, this is one of the Diablo carbide tip blades. They work really well. This is some hard metal in itself, but this blade is wore about out. We use this blade to cut some bearings out of our skid steer. Our oxyacetylene was down, so we used didn't have a way to get any oxyacetylene at the time on the weekend either, so we ended up using the carbide tip blade there, and it actually worked pretty good. It took a little bit of time on a hardened bearing. Those things are extremely hard. But I was pleased, but it pretty well wore that blade out, and I'm still using it. I need to go buy a new one. They're definitely worth the money, I'll say that. I'm going to go ahead and knock these out of here and then crawl out. Get that pivot mark here. Alright. Alright, so I'm going to take that leaf spring up to our local spring shop. We've got one here in town. They'll get me new spring and a couple new equalizer bars. So here are our new parts for the trailer. 2 new equalizer bars, new leaf spring, 2 new U-bolts, and 2 new pivot pins. They actually didn't have the smaller bolts that go in here for the springs. I'll have to get those tomorrow. I'll just go to the hardware store and get some grade 8 bolts. I want to touch base on one thing though. So what you're looking at right here is about almost $300 in parts. I think the U-bolts, custom bent U-bolts, the pivot pins and the equalizer bars were close to 150, not quite, and then the spring was like 125, I think. I went to a local spring shop here in town. They did have to order the spring. They can't get individual leaves. I would have liked to have just replaced this one leaf. They had one that was real close, but it was just a little short. And they said the people they get their leaf springs from for trailers in this smaller 2-inch wide spring, they just don't sell single leaves anymore. So I did look it up. I could have got one online for probably 70, 80 bucks, I think. So I did pay a little more, but I do like to shop local when I can, support our local economy. I do want to touch base on one thing though. So I did spend a little more, but in a sense I got a little more because the reason this thing failed, cut through the bolt, and the bolt wore all the way through the bushing, the outer steel tube, and then through the side plates here. It's because Load Trail went cheap, and this is a non-greasable pivot pin. There's no grease zerk on either end. Excuse me. See, this one upgraded with a grease zerk, grease hole. It's nice it's only coming out one side. One thing I'll say, when you do install these, make sure this hole is going sideways. You don't want this hole going up or down, because it will create a stress riser around the hole and possibly fail that pivot pin at the hole. So I just wanted to mention that because, again, I think that's where the number of bolts that Load Trail goes through. I mean, I think I paid $10 for the 2 bolts here. A little pricey. I mean, Load Trail's probably getting these things here for 50 cents to $1. It might cost them $1.50 to put a freaking grease zerk in it. So again, that's saving $1 here and there and costing your customers money, and it's costing your reputation is what it's doing. So I won't rant too long on that. So just a little heads up. Look at that. So this isn't one that I would say is owner caused neglect. I would say this is Load Trail failure, because you could not grease this if you wanted to without taking it apart. So okay, went ahead and hung the spring over the back perch. I got some wood blocks here, because I'm gonna have to get this axle up a little bit higher. It was a lot lighter without the drum on it, I can tell you that. That's got me high enough. See, that just hangs on one side, so it's pretty easy to get this spring up, and then I'll get the axle in place where it needs to be once I get the spring in here. Let's see, I might use just grease this perch with some, I'm just using some white lithium grease. Bolts fit good and tight. Alright, so that one's hung. So my spring place didn't have these.
You got your camera filming now. Can you see?
Pretty well that. Yeah.
You got my thing wrapped through your camera, the tripod here.
I'm trying to get the cameras to see.
Huh?
I can see just fine. The camera can't see when you get over here. Alright, that looks like butter.
You don't have to put any kind of Loctite or anything on those threads? That. But you said you were going to put on these in that hub right there now. This other one you can grease it. This one right here, there's no way of greasing it, are there?
It will be aggravating. Bring that light over here. Go hang that other side. Before I...
You gotta do what? Hang the other side.
Yeah, because the axle is rotated forward.
Here's the light.
Nah. Give me that tube of white, that thing of white lithium grease over there.
Yeah. White grease. Go. Did you have to cut those U-bolts, or were they all both of them broke?
I cut them.
Thought you might help.
This one here could use damn. Okay, let's try this a second time. The first set of U-bolts, they gave me a standard set of U-bolts off the shelf. Must have been for a 7,000 pound axle, so they weren't, which would have a smaller diameter. They made this set custom, and it looks like it's going to work very well. Get them hand tight. Bent that one up twisted. It probably won't matter. Can't really see. Those are good and snug. All right. Okay, I'm just going to recap what I did here. Rewired this stuff to get it working, so, and wiring slow and tedious. Basically, I just came out of the back of that hub with the new magnet, new wiring, siliconed. The connectors broke coming out of the back of the hub, so I just siliconed them. And then I just used crimp connectors with shrink tubing, and since the end of that tubing wouldn't shrink up, I just put some silicone on the end of it. It comes over here, basically, I did the same at all 4 hubs. Wired in. I did use some of the special, this is rubber tape. It's not vinyl electrical tape like normal electrical tape, it's actually a stretchy rubber that seals up real well. So I did use some of that in a couple places. And then wire loom, and this one I didn't have any shrink tube to fit over these big butt connectors, so I just shoved silicone in the backs and the fronts of each of them, and then wire loom the wire across the top of the axle. It's nothing too fancy, but it'll work. It's protected, and it should stay corrosion free. So okay, easy way to mount trailer tires. Put them on a board. Get them up on the hub. I'm try to see the board in the camera. Yep. Use the board to lift them up. Close. Easy. And then I'll come through and tighten them with a torque wrench once I get them down, at least along breaker bars. I know how much torque's on them. So I got the trailer put back together. I've already gone in the house and cleaned up and taken a shower and fixed a rum and coke and relaxing a bit. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this video on the repairs. Got everything wired up. All the brakes are working individually. I'll get the truck in here tomorrow, get the jack stands out from under it, get it hooked up, do some brake testing maybe. I might have to do a little bit of fixing the wiring up here. They had a breakaway box on it and just cut some stuff free. So I'll check on that stuff tomorrow maybe if I get time. I wouldn't guarantee it'll be tomorrow, but it'll be sometime this weekend, and I'll try to video that and get that going. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I think I've got enough clips to make a plenty long video on just the repairs I've done so far. So I'll break this up a little bit. And hope you enjoyed, and like and subscribe if you want to see more about the trailer and other equipment and things we'll be doing in the future. Thank you.